Today, we are talking about one of the most shocking scandals to ever rock the British royal family. Welcome to Star Files News. If you haven't already, make sure to subscribe to Star Files News and hit that notification bell so you never miss our breaking coverage of the stories that matter.
The latest release of the Epstein files and the devastating revelations about Sarah Ferguson, the former Duchess of York, her ex-husband Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor, and how their relationship with convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein exposed their own daughters, Princesses Beatrice and Eugenie, to unimaginable danger. In late January 2026, the U.S. Department of Justice released over 3 million documents related to the investigation into Jeffrey Epstein and his crimes. These files have sent shockwaves through Britain, particularly affecting the House of York. What we've learned from these documents is nothing short of horrifying, not just about Andrew's relationship with Epstein, but about Sarah Ferguson's disturbing closeness to the convicted pedophile and how both parents willingly exposed their daughters to him. Let me be clear. Inclusion in these files does not necessarily indicate wrongdoing by everyone mentioned. However, the emails and correspondence revealed paint a deeply troubling picture of judgment, desperation, and parental negligence that has left many questioning how this could have happened. The newly released emails show that Sarah Ferguson, known as Fergie, maintained an extraordinarily close relationship with Epstein even after his 2008 conviction for soliciting prostitution from an underage girl. In these emails, Ferguson referred to Epstein as the brother I have always wished for and called him a legend, expressing gratitude for his generosity and kindness. But perhaps the most disturbing revelation came in an email from March 2010, just 1 month after Epstein's release from prison. When Epstein asked about meeting up, Ferguson allegedly replied, "Not sure yet. Just waiting for Eugenie to come back from a shagging weekend." Let that sink in. Sarah Ferguson was discussing her then 19-year-old daughter's sex life with a convicted sex offender. Eugenie was just 2 days away from her 20th birthday, likely spending time with her boyfriend at the time, trying to be a normal young person. Instead, her own mother sexualized her to a predatory pedophile. This wasn't just poor judgment. This was a mother creating a sexual lens through which a predator could view her own child. The relationship between the York family and Epstein goes back years, and the timeline is chilling. In 2008, Epstein pleaded guilty in Florida to soliciting a minor for prostitution. The victim was only 14 years old. Yet in 2009, just months after Epstein's release from prison while he was still under house arrest, Sarah Ferguson took both Beatrice and Eugenie to have lunch with him at his Miami residence. Think about that. A mother took her daughters, who were about 19 and 21 years old at the time, to visit a man who had just been released from prison for crimes against a child. The princesses were young enough to potentially still be of interest to someone with Epstein's predatory patterns. But it gets worse. In 2010, both Epstein and Harvey Weinstein, Harvey Weinstein were invited as guests to Princess Beatrice's 18th birthday party. Who else was at that party? How many of Beatrice's teenage friends were there? Eugenie would have been about 16 at the time. Were any of her friends there? Were there children even younger than 16 at that party that these two predators had access to? The emails reveal Sarah Ferguson's desperate financial situation and how Epstein exploited it. In one message, Ferguson wrote to Epstein, "I'm feeling very traumatized and alone. I'm wanting to work for you at organizing your houses." This was a woman offering to work for a convicted sex offender, managing his properties, the same properties where countless crimes against young women had taken place. Documents show that in 2001, years before her direct request for help, Epstein had wired Ferguson $150,000 after helping her cash in stock options from Weight Watchers. In another exchange, Ferguson wrote asking for urgent financial help. "I urgently need £20,000 for rent today. The landlord has threatened to go to the newspapers if I don't pay." Any brainwaves? Epstein had Ferguson exactly where he wanted her, desperate, grateful, and willing to provide access to her royal daughters in exchange for his generosity. The files show that Epstein actively sought access to Beatrice and Eugenie. In one email exchange from March 2010, after thanking Ferguson for a wonderful evening, Epstein wrote, "Sarah, could you ask one of your daughters to show redacted Buckingham Palace?" Ferguson's response? Of course. In another email from July 2010, Ferguson apologized to Epstein. "Sorry, the girls were not around this weekend for redacted. Shows I don't crack the whip when I'm not in the country." A mother was apologizing to a child sexual predator for not being able to make her daughters available to him. Let that sink in. Andrew, now known as Andrew Batten-Windsor, after being stripped of his royal titles in October 2025, has always claimed he cut off contact with Epstein in 2010. The latest files completely destroy that claim. A 2011 email shows Andrew writing to Epstein one day after the infamous photograph of him with Virginia Giuffre was published. "It would seem we are in this together and we'll have to rise above it." The files also include disturbing photographs showing Andrew on all fours over an unidentified, fully clothed woman lying on the ground, with Andrew touching her stomach and waist in some images. No context was provided for when or where these photos were taken. Email exchanges from August 2010 show Epstein offering to introduce Andrew to a friend for dinner, describing her as a 26-year-old Russian, clever, beautiful, trustworthy, and confirming she had Andrew's email address. Andrew replied that he would be delighted to see her. In September 2010, just days after Epstein's house arrest ended, someone using the Duke as a signature wrote to Epstein, "Delighted for you to come here to be," commonly understood to mean Buckingham Palace. Perhaps the most tragic victims in all of this are Princesses Beatrice and Eugenie, who had no control over who their parents were or the decisions they made. Royal expert Robert Jobson told People magazine that both sisters feel duped by their father. Just like the late Queen and Charles, Andrew told them all the same story, that he had done nothing wrong, Jobson explained. "My understanding is they feel pretty duped by the whole thing. I know that Eugenie especially has found it very difficult." Sources close to the family describe the sisters as torn, mortified, and aghast at what they've read, particularly the emails their mother sent to Epstein. They were teenagers and young adults when much of this was happening, unable to fully understand the danger their parents were exposing them to. Psychologist Professor Linda Papadopoulos explained the emotional toll. "The key here is differentiation, learning to emotionally separate without necessarily cutting off. You cannot control another person's behavior, but you can control your values, conduct, and boundaries." There are reports that Eugenie has distanced herself from her father, though Beatrice was seen with Andrew as recently as late January, just days before the latest file release. Friends say such photo opportunities will not be repeated. The fallout from these revelations has been swift and severe. Sarah Ferguson's charity, Sarah's Trust, announced it would be closing for the foreseeable future just days after the latest document release. She has been dropped by multiple charities including Julia's House, the Natasha Allergy Research Foundation, Prevent Breast Cancer, the Teenage Cancer Trust, and the British Heart Foundation. Andrew Batten-Windsor has been evicted from Royal Lodge, his home of over 20 years, and has moved to the Sandringham estate in Norfolk under the cover of darkness. King Charles stripped his brother of all royal titles in October 2025, and British Prime Minister Keir Starmer has called on Andrew to testify before the U.S. Congress about his dealings with Epstein. Thames Valley Police are now assessing allegations that a second woman, beside Virginia Giuffre, was sent to the UK by Epstein for a sexual encounter with Andrew at Royal Lodge in 2010. Royal expert Hilary Fordwich told Fox News, "This new revelation most certainly seals the end of any likelihood of any royal acceptance of either Sarah or Andrew. They are totally unfit for any royal proximity." The Epstein files have revealed a pattern of negligence, desperation, and horrifying judgment that exposed two young women to a dangerous predator. While Beatrice and Eugenie were adults by law when much of this occurred, they were still young, still vulnerable, and still dependent on their parents to protect them from harm. Instead, Sarah Ferguson sexualized her daughters to a convicted pedophile, apologized for not making them available to him, and maintained a fawning, desperate relationship with him even after his crimes were public knowledge. Andrew continued his friendship with Epstein years after he claimed he had cut ties, all while lying to his family, the public, and the late Queen. The question now is whether Andrew Batten-Windsor will ever face real accountability for his actions, and whether Sarah Ferguson will truly reckon with the danger she put her own children in. This is Star Files News, bringing you the truth others won't tell. Subscribe and stay informed. We'll continue to follow this story as it develops. The end.